Both of these types and the Whirlwind, which is parked up on the flight line, are Westland-built derivatives of designs from the American Sikorsky company. So the Whirlwind was a derivation of the Sikorsky S-55, then the Wessex, the development of the S-58, and finally the Sea King of the S-61. And there's the Wessex braking upwards and away. The type was first ordered by the Royal Navy in anti-submarine HAS-1 guise, and it came into service in 1961. For the Navy, it was the first anti-submarine helicopter that had been designed as such from the outset, and with gas turbine power to boot. At that point, a single Napier Gazelle. And compared with the Whirlwind it replaced, it was a huge advance. It gave the Royal Navy's anti-submarine helicopter force much better capabilities by night and in poor weather. It had a much larger payload. All round, its performance was superior. Soon there came the Mark III for the Royal Navy, by which time the RAF had started operating the Wessex in its HC2 guise. And that was much improved with twin-coupled Rolls-Royce Gnome turboshaft engines. It was ordered as a general-purpose transport, although it could perform also the ground assault role, armed with anti-tank missiles and machine guns. In its Mark II form for the RAF, the Wessex could carry up to 16 fully equipped troops, or an underslung load of 4,000 pounds. And they entered service in February 1964, going on to operate worldwide in support of British interests and Allied forces. They served, of course, for many years in Northern Ireland, and in 1997, when the territory was handed back over to Chinese control, RAF Wessex had been the last British military aircraft stationed in Hong Kong. We see here the HU-5 was developed as a twin-engined version for the Royal Navy to operate in the Royal Marines Commando support role, flying off the Navy's assault ships. They flew heroically in significant numbers during the Falklands campaign, deploying special forces, whether members of the SAS, the Special Air Squadron, or the SBS, the Special Boat Service, Special Air Service, I should say, for the SAS, moving men and material around that theatre. It came at a cost. 9 Wessex of the Royal Navy were lost in the Falklands, 6 of them in the Argentine Exocet missile-armed Super-Étendard strike aircraft attack against the transport ship, the Atlantic Conveyor. Used as a search and rescue helicopter by both the RAF and, as we see here, the Royal Navy. The Navy retired its last Wessex in 1988. The RAF with number 60 Squadron in 2003. This one was first flown in October 1966. It spent many years with the Royal Navy Commando Helicopter Force, not least on deployment in the Far East, before it transferred to the search and rescue role. It returned to commando support duties with 845 Naval Air Squadron during the Falklands War of 1982, being flown out to the theatre in the cargo hold of a short Belfast transport operated by Heavy Lift Cargo Airlines. It came back aboard the Royal Fleet Auxiliary ship, the RFA Oliver. Was retired in 1986 and became a ground instructional airframe. That could well have been it. At one point it was allocated to the Royal Navy Historic Flight, but was never operated by them. Instead, Andrew Whitehouse acquired it, and it flew again on the 15th of February 2019 from the Historic Helicopters facility at Chard. That was after a restoration on which 10,000 hours were expended. And the results are clear to see. It is immaculate. It's been returned to its former Royal Navy Rescue colours, of course. But as it comes into hover at Show Centre, up above it passes by the Sea King. The Sea King was selected by the Royal Navy as a Wessex replacement in the anti-submarine warfare role. It came into service as the Sea King HAS-1 in 1969, and then a few years afterwards the RAF ordered 15 of them to replace its search and rescue Whirlwinds and to augment the Wessex it was already using for that role. The first of them came into RAF service in September 1977. Boosted a couple of times after that. A few more were ordered after the Falklands War so that Sea Kings could be deployed out there with number 78 Squadron to provide search and rescue facilities in the South Atlantic. And then when the last of the rescue Wessex were phased out in the mid-90s, 6 new HAR-3A models were turned out by Westland with a digital autopilot, multi-sensor suite and all sorts of other improvements, many of which were retrofitted to these initial Mark IIIs. And in service around the UK with numbers 22 and 202 squadrons, with flights of 2 aircraft located at different bases around the coast. The yellow Sea Kings in particular became almost as emblematic of the Royal Air Force as the Red Arrows. They were such a familiar sight, and indeed, I'm sure for many people this is a very nostalgic sight, indeed, a yellow Sea King. Once again in British skies. Performing that vital rescue task around the coastline. They became such a familiar public face of the RAF, and they also furthered that reputation in the course of many high-profile rescue efforts. It was RAF Sea Kings that were used during the recovery efforts following the Piper Alpha oil rig disaster of 1988. went on to appear regularly in the news in the aftermath of the floods in Boscastle, in Sheffield, in Cockermouth and in Gloucestershire, and after the Virgin train derailment at Greyrig, amongst countless other taskings. The RAF Search and Rescue Force would expect upwards of 1,000 call-outs every year. Before you added in the missions flown by the Royal Navy Sea Kings and the civilian Bristow helicopters operated Sikorsky F-61s flown on behalf of HM Coast Guard, which together with the RAF's assets formed a unified nationwide search and rescue service. Until early 2016, when the service was privatised. The last of the RAF Sea Kings, including this one, were retired, and the task was passed over to Bristow Helicopters, a company with a great deal of experience in the role. They now fly from 10 locations countrywide with a mixture of Leonardo AW189 and Sikorsky S-92 helicopters. But still to many, I'm sure, the yellow Sea Kings will be classed as the most recognisable face of that particular mission around the UK. This one served with all of the RAF Sea King units, including a time out in the Falklands. It was withdrawn from RAF service, as I say, at the beginning of 2016, put up for disposal, acquired by Historic Helicopters and moved to charge in December 2017. It made its first flight in civilian hands on the 20th of March 2020, and if you look closely you can see it carries the coat of arms of the city of Durham on the nose. That was applied when the aircraft was in service at RAF Boomer with number 202 Squadron. In case you recognise this machine, it recently appeared in the BBC drama series Vigil, although they insisted that the RAF titles were painted out and replaced with Royal Navy ones. Quite apart from the 3 aircraft they brought to Duxford this weekend, Historic Helicopters, as I say, has several other Sea Kings on its books. Next to fly will hopefully be an ex-Army Air Corps Lynx AH-7, and they're also going to be restoring the ex-Sloan Helicopters Westland Widgeon, which will be another unique addition to the fleet. Incidentally, we were hoping to have with us yet another old helicopter of British manufacture at Duxford this weekend in the form of the Bristol Sycamore from the Red Bull-sponsored Flying Bulls fleet in Austria. Unfortunately, that was precluded by a technical problem which has since been resolved. So maybe at some point in the future we can bring that, the historic helicopters fleet and the rotaries from the historic Army aircraft flight all together for a real helicopter balbo. Incidentally, historic helicopters have a supporters club you can join. They've got a stand here in the public area just opposite where the helicopters have been parked on the crowd line, and you can find out more and join by going to historichelicopters.com.
Yes, okay.
They're also a keen supporter of the Navy Wings organisation, operating as associate aircraft alongside Navy Wings' own assets. That being the civilian organisation that's now taken over from the now disbanded Royal Navy Historic Flight. Now coming into Crowd Centre for the final part of their display. Lovely sight that is. Helicopters, the Westland Wessex HU5 and Sea-King HAR3. The Wessex, flown by former Army Air Corps Apache instructor and display pilot Jim Traherne, and the Sea-King by former Empire Test Pilot School Chief Rotary Wing instructor and ex-Royal Navy Jungley pilot Steve Daniels. So as not to affect any of the lighter aircraft on the flight line with their rotor wash, they're going to be ground taxiing back into their parking slots. But we're going to, in part at least,